Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we've got news. Before we get to the show, though, I do want to ask, because we've had a few people who have emailed in and given feedback on the EV roundtable that I did with Pat Dangler and Lamar Wilson. And so far it's been very positive. So that's good to hear. And I do think, based on the feedback, this is something we're going to do not a lot of, but more of. I don't know if that makes sense, because this is primarily a news podcast, right? But based on the feedback, it seems like it's also something that people enjoy. So what I want to do is I want to get more feedback on that particular episode. So if you liked it or didn't like it, and why, so I kind of have an idea as to what you're thinking. And then also, if you have ideas for topics that we could do an EV roundtable around, if you have ideas for topics for the EV roundtable, then that kind of gives me an idea as to who to invite on and what we're going to chat about. So if you don't mind emailing in, leaving a message on Patreon, Supercast, or Twitter or whatever, however you want to get a hold of me, it's emails Bodie at the email's Bodie BODIE at 918digital.com. You can find me at 918digital on Twitter, and then of course on Supercast or Patreon, just reply, or you can direct message me there as well. But yeah, seems like people enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it a lot too. Like I had a lot of fun. That's kind of been something I've been wanting to do for a while. All right, not kind of. It really has been something I wanted to do for a while. Let's get to our EV news. As many of you know, I love battery swap technology for EVs. You simply drive into a little mini garage. It takes your old battery out, puts a new fresh battery in, and you're on your way. I love that concept. Well, CATL has designed a battery swap station for semi-trucks. And CATL has been working in secret with a dozen heavy equipment operators to develop 30 different EVs capable of battery swapping at the semi level, right? At the heavy equipment level. Now, I would imagine that these are just prototypes, but it's cool to see that they're out there. By 2025, CATL says that there'll be 300 battery swap stations in 13 regions in China. And then they're going to add another 16 city clusters or regions by 2030. So that's pretty impressive. And I think when it comes to semi-trucks, I think this is a great use of the technology, right? And it sounds like this technology will make its way to Europe and Australia. However, it's unknown if it's going to make it here in North America. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Speaking of semi-trucks and EVs, Nikola is auctioning off 103 of their completed and fully operational hydrogen trucks. This is to pay off creditors with their bankruptcy action. As an added bonus, if you win one of these trucks, you get spare parts, batteries, tires if you want them. But that's not all. You'll also get equipment to build your own your own hydrogen fill station. Of course, hydrogen not included. But yeah, I thought that was I don't know how much these are going to go for. I think it'll be interesting once the auction is complete to see what people actually purchase these for. But yeah, I would bid $100 and a little bit of chewed gum on one of these vehicles just to get the hydrogen fill station. I don't know what I would do for it because I don't currently have any hydrogen to put in it, but I think it'd be an interesting conversation piece in my front yard, and my neighbors would hate me. And next up, we have some Rivian updates. So Rivian has secured a $1 billion investment from VW Group. If you remember, back last year, VW and Rivian created a joint venture company And VW said that they were going to invest up to $5.8 billion in this joint venture, and that's going to include, um, some of the software that Volkswagen and Rivian will share and use, and some of the ECU components and that kind of thing. So Rivian just got another $1 billion from Volkswagen Group. And this is excellent timing because Rivian is currently getting ready to expand production for their R2 and R3 vehicles at their Normal, Illinois plant. And as luck would have it, again, Rivian has some updates for us when it comes to the R2 and R3 vehicles. And we're going to use the R2 platform just because the R3 is built on the R2 platform. It just looks a little different. So when we refer to the different platforms, it's the R1 platform, which is the R1S and the R1T, the SUV and truck, and then the R2 platform includes the crossover vehicle, R2 crossover vehicle, as well as the R3. All right, so clear as mud. Here's our update. The R2 platform wiring harness has 60% fewer inline connectors, is 44 pounds lighter, or 20 kilograms lighter, and 2.3 miles shorter than the R1S. So the wiring harness for the R2, I'm going to repeat this, has 60% fewer inline connectors, is 44 pounds lighter, and is 2.3 miles shorter than the R1S. And just that's just unfathomable to me that there's 2.3 or could have been 2.3 miles of wiring in these vehicles because they're so small. But I mean, compared to 2.3, but when you consider that the new R1S, the updated model, they took like 1.6 miles of wiring out of that vehicle at the last update. So that's insane. So this has, let's say we'll just round it to 3.5 miles less wiring in it than the original R1S, which is just mind blown, right? It also has fewer electronic control units, or ECUs. The R1 platform has 17 and the R2 platform has 7. Rivian has simplified the electronic motor inverter. There's actually 41% fewer parts compared to the R1 Enduro drive unit, which can be on the R1T or the R1S. The R2 rear structure, the structural components, they're using 3 large die castings compared to Rivian's R1 platform, which is using 50 stamped parts and 300 joints. I wrote down 3,000, but it's 300 joints. Now, if you were like, well, that kind of sounds familiar, Tesla did this with the Model 3 and the Model Y. They actually called it the mega casting, right? And then they created a few large parts instead of many small parts, which saves money, time, and weight, right? The only problematic part of this is that it might be harder to replace if it's damaged, or it might be problematic to fix if it's damaged in a crash. So that's the downside. In terms of the battery pack, we now know that LG Energy will supply the battery cells for the R2 platform. So right now, for the R1 platform, Rivian is using 2170 cells. For the R2, they're going to use 4695 cylindrical cells. So that's a kind of not a new form factor, because the cylindrical cell is the form factor. It's just a different size. And if you were curious about the numbers that they use when they talk about battery cells, it's the diameter in millimeters and the height in millimeters. So for a 4695 cell, it's going to be 46 millimeters in diameter and 95 millimeters in height. And according to the article, these new 4695 cells will be 6 times the capacity of the 2170 cells that they're currently using in the R1 platform. So we have improved energy density and also improved thermal management, which is important. I have to tell you, I am excited to see the R2 in the wild. Pat Dangler, who was on again last episode. She's actually seen the R2 in the wild. She hasn't gotten a chance to ride in it, but she's actually been able to get fairly close as compared to me, which has never seen it in real life. And she has good things to say about it. So I'm excited to see these things get into production, and hopefully they'll hit their target price, which they say they will be able to, which is $45,000 starting. I love what Rivian's doing, so I obviously I want to see them succeed. So this is exciting news. All right, that is it for our news this week. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that Acast Plus was going away as a way to support this show, and we were going to be moving over to Supercast. So, if you want to support this show financially, there's two different ways. Well, there's three different ways to do it. One is to sit through the commercials, because that is certainly you paying for the show with your time. And then the new way to support the show is Supercast. So, if you go to kilowatt.supercast.com, you can support the show there, or you can go to patreon.com/kilowatt. Now, I'm going to put links in the show notes for all of this, just in case anybody wants to go out there and support the show. But just so you know, just so you know, um, I will be adding a page to the website. I haven't done it yet. I am finally crawling out of the hole that I've dug myself into in the last 5 months or so. I'm just now getting over the edge of that hole. So I've got a bunch of things on my list still, but it's getting smaller every day. So, but I'll put all the links in the show notes if you want to support the show. And I'm not sure if you can do this on Supercast yet, but on Patreon, you can sign up to be a free member, right? Which is, in fact, free. And occasionally, I'll accidentally hit publish to all so that you will maybe get an ad-free episode every now and again. Okie doke, let's move on to our Tesla news. A few weeks ago, we talked about how Tesla was not taking Cybertruck trade-ins. I am happy to report that they are now taking Cybertruck trade-ins. So that's the good news. The maybe not so good news is, according to the Cybertruck Owners Club forum, one of the folks on the forum went to do the trade-in with Tesla, right? So they bought a 2024 Cybertruck all-wheel drive Foundation Series for $100,000. The vehicle has 6,000 miles on it currently. The trade-in value is sitting at $65,400, and it's just been a little bit over a year since they purchased that vehicle. So that's a 34.6% depreciation in their vehicle. Another Cybertruck owner posted um, pretty much the same vehicle as the first one, but with 32,000 miles, and they were offered $60,500 for their vehicle. I went to Kelley Blue Book just to kind of look and see what a trade-in value would be for a Cybertruck with 15,000 miles, all the same stuff as the other two vehicles, just 15,000 miles. And according to Kelley Blue Book, the value was around 61 to 66,000 miles, or $66,000. So, yeah, a little bit of depreciation on the Cybertruck for sure. Just as a point of reference, according to Electrek, pickup trucks will generally depreciate about 20% in the first year, and then it goes up to 34% roughly 3 to 4 years. In 3 to 4 years. So we're looking at some depreciation on the Cybertruck right now that would be equal to 3 to 4 years of being on the market with other vehicles. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And that brings us to our main topic, which is Robotaxi. As many of you know, the Robotaxi service or Cybercab service, whatever Tesla's calling it, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, that they're planning on launching in Austin in June, which is like a week and a bit away, right? A week and a few days. And the U.S. government has changed some rules for automated vehicles. There's something, I guess, called the Automatic Vehicle Exemption Program, which allows foreign manufacturers to kind of have more latitude than domestic manufacturers when it comes to autonomous vehicles. And I'm not 100% sure why that is, but now our domestic autonomous driving companies or manufacturers have it's on a level playing field. Everything that a foreign company can do, the domestic company can do, which is, I think, fair, right? The goal is to promote U.S. leadership and innovation in advanced vehicle technologies. That's the official goal. The Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy emphasized the need to out-innovate China, aiming to reduce red tape and create a single national standard that balances innovation with safety. And I agree with some of that. I think that sometimes the red tape or the hoops that you have to jump through for things can be a little ridiculous. However, I still think safety should be paramount, and maybe it should be a little bit uncomfortable for these companies to start rolling this out until they've proven that these things work at a mass scale, like the manufacturers or companies operating the autonomous driving say they are. And I do think it's a good idea to have federal rules. I don't think that that's very controversial. However, I think states should be able to say, you know what, we're going to have stricter rules than what the rules are. I mean, there should be a minimum, and that would be whatever the federal rules are would be the minimum. But states should be able to adopt stricter rules if they want to. So in the article, it says those new rules mainly focus on robo-taxis, which, remember, we said robo-taxis, even when we're not necessarily talking about Tesla here, because that's going to come up later, or ride-hailing services, right? These are not rules for your car if you have full self-driving. These are rules for autonomous vehicle operators doing it commercially, not if you're doing it privately. So, in a strange coincidence, all of these rules were changed just as Tesla's set to launch their robotaxi service in Austin this June, right? We already talked about this. And Elon has some pretty deep ties with the government here. And let's look at some of these new policies. The new policy reduces the public disclosure requirements for how automated driving systems operate, which makes it harder for journalists, regulators, and researchers, or anyone outside the company, to analyze error patterns, right? Doesn't mean that it's impossible. I'm sure they can find this data somehow. It isn't transparent and available for everybody to see. Companies still must report any crashes to the federal government unless it's a minor accident under $1,000 that no longer requires reporting. So any crash that's under $1,000 that doesn't have fatalities, hospitalizations, airbag deployments, or involve any vulnerable users like pedestrians, cyclists, those things may be exempt. And I say maybe because, I didn't read the law, right? I got this from an article. So I want to make sure that we're clear that there might be some situations where they're not exempt. So just putting that out there. And then as far as reporting software version information, like what was the car running prior to the accident or when the accident occurred, that's considered confidential business information and is hidden from the public or the public reports. So those things are a little concerning to me. Like, when I read this, I was like, is this a big deal? And it's probably not that big of a deal. It probably does make some sense for them to not have to report every minor fender bender, even when no damage is done, right? And then, if I'm being honest, right, when my kids were babies, like maybe they were 1 or 2, they were teething, they were going through something. I was sleep deprived. It was just me and the kids. I was working at the fire department. And then I would come home. My wife and I were opposite schedules. We were both exhausted. But anyway, this is my story. So I'm pulling into the garage. The kids and I just got home from somewhere. I'm pulling into the garage. I'm tired, and I accidentally hit the corner of my garage with my car. I did almost no damage to the garage, and I did a little bit of damage to my front right quarter panel on my car. I took it to a body shop that I trust, and this is not even the most expensive body shop in my area at that time. It cost me $1,200 cash to get that fixed. So that was 11 or 12 years ago, right? Depending on how old my kids are, maybe 10 to 12 years ago. But the details are a little fuzzy as to how long ago that happened. Um, but it's $1,200 just for that little bit of damage, right? So I don't think $1,000 is a hard um, milestone to hit, right? If it caused any sort of damage to the vehicle itself, like the cyber cab itself, or any damage to the cyber cab itself and the vehicle that it hit, or whatever it hit, I think $1,000 is pretty easy to overcome. So just kind of want to put that out there. But my question on this, right, is who gets to decide what it costs to fix, right? So I'm going to pick on Tesla, and I have no reason to believe that this is going to happen. But let's say that the cybercab is cruising through a parking lot and hits a car, rear ends a car. Well, if the Tesla representatives get there and they said, "Hey, listen, we're going to take care of this. You have about $500 worth of damage on your vehicle, and we have $255 worth of damage on our vehicle, $755. We're under $1,000." In reality, they take care of it, and it costs a total of $3,000 to get both vehicles fixed. How is that reconciled? Like, how are we making sure that not just Tesla, but all these companies are being honest? Because let's just talk about GM and dragging a pedestrian in San Francisco. It's not limited to one specific company in the autonomous vehicle arena, right? All of these companies could potentially do something that's a little bit shady. So I want to know who gets to decide what is over $1,000 and what isn't. I think that should be something that is uh, closely watched. Let's put it that way. So critics of these new rules, which include safety advocates, and of course researchers, they worry that these policies are going to limit oversight and benefits companies like Tesla and whoever else is operating an autonomous driving service at the expense of transparency. And I agree. Um, I think there is a way for you to report this that is transparent, but is also not a ding for a minor fender bender or a minor accident that happens that in all reality isn't that big of a deal and happens with human drivers every single day. I think there is a way that we can report that is fair to the public, the person who is involved in the accident, and the company that is running the autonomous vehicle service. So I do agree with that. Um, William Wallace, I picked this because Braveheart, but William Wallace, who is the head of safety advocacy for Consumer Reports, told Wired, this does seem to close the door on a huge number of additional reports, and I think that whenever possible, especially when we're dealing with new technology, and especially when it's new technology and it involves the public, because my kids ride their bikes in the same streets that Waymo vehicles are operating, right? It's very possible that somebody riding their bike could be hit by a Waymo vehicle. So I think the more transparency is better. All right, we're not done talking about robotaxi and the US government just yet. Tesla, again, is set to launch the robotaxi service in June, but the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration does have some questions. And these questions are kind of related to the robotaxi rollout, but it really stems from an investigation that started in October of 2023, where the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration was already examining full self-driving and autopilot and its ability to operate when there's poor visibility, right? So some of the things that they are concerned about is the full self-driving's ability to operate safely in adverse weather conditions. And, that includes rain, fog, sun glare, and airborne dust, which here in Arizona, we have haboobs, which are these enormous dust storms. They are truly impressive. Like when these things roll through, it is advised that you pull off to the side of the road, especially if you're on the freeway, pull off to the side of the road. Do not turn your hazards on. Just pull off as far as you can safely get and wait for it to pass. Because if you put your hazards on, people are going to think that you're still a part of traffic and they might hit you from behind. So they recommend that you don't touch the brakes and you don't put your hazards on, which is I always thought was nutty. They also want to know about the deployment details. So the specific number of vehicles, which models are going to be involved, and the projected service availability times. Like, is it going to be between 8 and 5, 24 hours a day? What are we looking at here to start? And Elon has recently confirmed that Tesla is going to be operating 10 to 20 or 10 to 12, excuse me, robotaxis initially. But then over a few months, he says that there will be over 1,000 or at least 1,000. And initially, when Elon was talking about the robotaxi rollout in Austin, they said 10 to 20 at first. That number is 10 to 12, Elon's most recent statement on that. So if you were like, hey, I think it's 10 to 20, I have an article that says 10 to 12. Let's see. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration is also questioning the supervision protocols, right? Are these taxis are they going to operate in real-time supervision by Tesla employees? Are they going to be entirely remote or in vehicle? Um, I think at this point, we know that they're going to be, at least initially, with a driver. By the time June comes around, it might be that they're remote. Whether they're monitoring, these employees are monitoring one vehicle or 10 vehicles, we don't know that just yet. And then they want to know, is full self-driving going to adhere to established industry standards when it comes to autonomous driving? And finally, they are curious about Tesla's future expansion plans. Like, what's the timeline for enabling functionality on vehicles that are not directly owned and controlled by Tesla? What markets are they planning on going to? That kind of thing. So honestly, I don't see anything in terms of these questions as being unreasonable. I think these are very reasonable questions. I'm not 100% sure if when Tesla answers these, we'll be able to, through a Freedom of Information Act, actually get the answers, because, the U.S. government is a little kooky right now in what it will do and won't do. So we'll keep our eye out on that. And that's not all, because I have a little bit of potpourri when it comes to robotaxi news here. Initially, these vehicles are going to operate in geofenced areas and neighborhoods in Austin. Um, Elon did say at some point, or I believe it was Elon that said this. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. But somebody from Tesla said it was going to be driverless from the outset, right? I'm very skeptical that that's going to be the case. Elon did say that robotaxi is headed to Saudi Arabia, and I think we've already talked about that this week. And then something I found interesting, and the article that I read explains this perfectly, right? But the headline might be a little deceiving. So the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office rejected Tesla's application to trademark the term robotaxi. So the patent office said that the term robotaxi is too generic or descriptive, potentially hindering its exclusive use by Tesla. Okay, so I mean, that kind of makes sense. I'm pretty sure they did coin the term, but okay, sure, that makes sense. Tesla now has 3 months to respond. Now, here's where I think it might, some of the headlines might be a little deceptive, right? The robotaxi trademark that the patent office denied was for Tesla's autonomous electric vehicles, right? But it wasn't for Tesla's autonomous ride-hailing service. So they have a separate patent or trademark pending for the use of robotaxi as a name for the autonomous ride-hailing service. So we don't know if this has been approved or not. Right now, it's still pending. So we'll see what happens there. I would guess that if it's too broad and descriptive and generic, for, one use, it's probably too broad for the other. And then Tesla has some other trademarks in the hopper, which are Cybercab, that's no surprise, Robovan, Robobus, and other than Cybercab, the other two not very good names. And then if you want to kind of get a different perspective on Tesla's robo-taxi service, Patrick, who runs carswithcords.net, and I'll put a link in the show notes to his article. It's a great blog. I visit it. It comes into whenever he writes a new article, it comes into my RSS reader. So I'll put a link in the show notes if you would like to visit his site and read his really good article. All right, everybody, that is it for me today. On Friday's show, we are going to sit down with the folks from Clockwork Energy. I sat down with Andrea and Jen, and we talked about what they're up to when it comes to fixing kind of a big problem in the DC fast charging space. So I think you're really going to like that interview. And again, that will be on Friday's episode. So, again, if you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.com. I'm on Twitter at 918digital. I'm also on LinkedIn, Bodie Grimm on LinkedIn, or 918digital on LinkedIn, if you want to follow me there as well. I'm starting to slowly post more things on LinkedIn. I don't post hardly anything on X, but LinkedIn is probably where I do most of my posting, but it's not a lot, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, so if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, you can do so there. And I hope you all had a wonderful week, and I will talk to you on Friday.